It's now November, so that means another roundup of all the 3D printed bits that you can get from different creators out there this month. Now, I am full of cold and sickness bugs, so I'm going to rattle through these pretty quickly, but a bit of homework for you lot. If there's any on this list you would like me to subscribe to and test out, throw it down in the comments below as well. Future videos, I'm going to try and do an additional video each month where I basically review a different creator to see what the models are like, what the supports are like, and get them painted up and stuff like that. So if there's anything on this one that you want to see next month, let me know. Also, very quick thing to add, my mini factory is working again. It's not got slowdowns, so hopefully you're having the same thing as well. I know I moaned about them last month, but this month they seem to be doing well. So first off, let's kick it off with fantasy, and I've got Rescale Miniatures, and they've got some really interesting undead miniatures this month. One of which is a little bit too close to comfort for like being close to like Games Workshop, but these look great. There are loads of like your winged bats or your zombie bats with the ghouls and wraiths on them. Some fantastic looking like ghouls and wraith just base units as well. Interesting looking dragon. And then we've got the the big boy. They've got two of the big ones actually. One that looks really interesting. It's this big like spectral skeleton with all these like wraiths and stuff coming out of this magic portion, which looks really interesting. And then they've got the one that's, yeah, I'm just going to pop them up on screen and you can make your decisions. It almost looks identical to the Games Workshop one, just a change of weapon there. It's a lovely looking sculpt, but close to comfort there. So that is a Rescale Miniatures with some amazing looking undead ones. So next up we've got Artisan Guild, and I've put trees here. These are some lovely looking units. There's just so many different bits there, modular weapons and everything else as well. Some fantastic, like, I guess more like heavy units. You've got some great infantry units there, some amazing looking commanders. And I always like what they do with their pin-ups, to be fair. I'm not a massive fan of pin-up miniatures. Some people will be, some people won't be. I feel like Artisan Guild get the balance right, and this one looks really nice as well. And then this big old like tree root lady as well. Some really good looking sculpts here. Next up, we've got Highlands Miniatures. I love me some Highlands Miniatures. Again, if you are into old world, fantasy, or anything like that, they do so many good ones. And they're doing more of their expansion into their elf units. So you've got all of these elf like infantry with heavier weapons, so big old like claymores, halberds, everything else there. Lovely looking chariot as well, which is really, really good. And then this like commander at the front here. So a really, really nice set there. They seem to be expanding more and more. I'm interested to see what they do next as well. I really hope they do Skaven at some point. Ratmen from Highlands Miniatures would be great. Next up, we have Beholder Miniatures. And again, they've gone for their Chaos versus Dwarves. And the ones I really like in this set are their like heavy Dwarves. So they've got a load of stuff. They've got these nice big old chaotic units that look fantastic. But then they've got these really like heavily armored, almost like fantasy Terminator dwarves. I think they look really, really good. The other thing that always draws me to these is they just look really well sculpted. Enough detail on there to be nice and detailed and fun to paint without being too detailed. But then with really good thick weapons that don't look goofy, but they look like they'll print really nicely, but also held up on the tabletop as well. So that is Beholder Miniatures with their big old Chaos and Dwarves. Next up, I've got Comet Lord Miniatures, and I put here interesting heroes in different poses. So these are, I don't think I've seen anything like this, at least for a while anyway, where it's basically one character but reposed in different things. I quite like that. I think it looks really interesting. So there's like your evil one, or more evilly kind of like vampire type one, and then your big old like World of Warcraft hero as well. I like these. They're very, very nice sculpts. They look fantastic. And I do like the ability to have them in different sculpts and poses. So that way, if, you know, sometimes you see a sculpt and you go, I really like that, but it looks, you know, I don't like the pose. I guess this gives you a bit more flexibility on that. There's one version of him riding on a giant cat as well. So if you're into giant cats, then they've got that right here. So that is Comet Lord Miniatures. And last on the fantasy one, I've got White Angel Miniatures. This will link over to Patreon because for some reason their tribes is really crap. It needs sorting out. Everything is locked, so you can't see what you're actually getting on the tribes. Sort that out because it just makes sense. Show it all off on there, especially because you get so much with these. Each month they do loads and loads of stuff. So this month you've got like your Dark Elves, you've got your Standard Elf units as well, but most importantly you've got some Chaotic Dwarves. There's loads and loads of infantry. You've also got some like leader units and everything else as well. Again, Old World or just Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, anything else like that. There's loads of stuff here and just loads of choice to be able to go from. So really, really nice looking set, and that is White Angel miniatures. Like I said, it'd be great if they could sort out their tribes as well, because at the moment, if you're browsing on tribes and you don't know that they're on Patreon as well, you don't really know what you're going to get. So that is a fantasy. Moving across onto sci-fi, and the first one I've got is Arc Villain Games, and I've gone for armoured soldiers for these. Not entirely sure exactly where they fit, but I really like these. I guess they're more for your Imperial Guard. These look lovely. There's some really, really interesting sculpts here. They're all, I don't know, like if the Imperium didn't fall to just absolute doom and gloom, this is kind of what I imagine they'd be. Really nice, sleek, well-armoured shock troops. And there's some great like heavy weapons. You've got like the heavy machine gun on this like on these tracks. You've got a mortar, and then these big old like armoured mech suits with big shields, and obviously some sentinels as well. And these really nice looking sleek transport type bits as well. There's a lot there that I really, really like. I think they would most likely fit very nicely with a lot of existing armies as well. I'm quite tempted to sub because I just like those chonky big things with shields. Just random. And who doesn't love a sentinel? They're always lovely to have. Next up, I've got Station Forge, and they have moved into a new type of army this month. So go through the ones that they have shown off so far. They are doing some like Tau proxies. So again, if you're into Tau and you want some big mech suits and stuff like that, they've got them, which is quite nice. And weirdly now, my mini factory is not loading, so I don't know if that's just me or if that's my mini factory. But they've got some really nice looking Tau units, which I think is great. They've also got some corrupted Space Marine proxies as well. So if you're into your chaos and everything, they've got more like their Socrates units that they've been doing previously, but they're now all like mutated and stuff like that. So a lot of stuff there. I'm not too sure if I like the Tau mech suits and stuff. They look really nice. I think they're a bit of an acquired taste. I think the renders don't do them justice. They're all modular and everything else, so you can change them up to make them look how you want. The pose and stuff in the render, I think looks a little bit, I don't know, odd. But I reckon once you print them off, they'll be pretty good. They've also done a corrupted Archon Angel as well, so it's like the corrupted Primarch. It looks really nice. I'm tempted to have a play around with this and do like a corrupted Sanguinius. I think that could be quite fun. And then this big old like artillery transport as well for some Imperial Guard. So there are loads and loads and loads of stuff for Station Forge. So again, if you're into sci-fi, you should be subscribed to Station Forge just because there's so much stuff there. Next up, we've got Gamuk, and they've got some really nice looking Dark Angel stuff and some Imperial Guard as well. The Imperial Guard that I like on this, that I really, really like on this, I like cowboys on robot horses. I think they look absolutely, yeah, fantastic. Their tanks look amazing as well. So I always find that the Gamuk Space Marine proxies are really hit and miss. Their Chaos Space Marine proxies are like 10 out of 10. They're really, really good. And the reason for that is that their body proportions are normal-ish, but then their weapons are massive. So like all the bolters and everything just look a little bit goofy. I don't personally feel as though they fit that well with the rest of the theme of the model. But the Chaos stuff, that looks fine. It looks all right. These seem to be really, really well proportioned, all like the Dark Angel stuff here. So irritatingly, my microphone just died partway through it when I got to editing. So here we go again. So anyway, as I was saying, the proportions look a little bit odd on some of them, but these, they look really, really well sculpted. There's so much to like as part of this set. I just really, really like them. They look really nice. And then obviously you've got the cowboys on robot horses, which look fantastic. These Imperial Guard, like heavy weapons. And then the vehicles look really good in this set. I absolutely love those tanks. I think they look absolutely fantastic. And the big old Dreadnought as well. The Gamuk Dreadnoughts look really nice. Then there's a Chaos Lord, if you want that. And then there's these ladies on big like bombs and ammo stacks, in case you're into that. So definitely a really good one by Gammak this month and worthwhile having a look at. Next up is One Page Rules and their Human Defense Force. I backed this one last month because I think it's fantastic. And this is my favorite release by One Page Rules. They just look great. I think all in all, these look amazing. There's so many new things in this one as well. So again, you get some more units to go with your Human Defense Force, but they've also got these like little robots that look fantastic as well. I really like the idea of doing like a almost independent human force, which is also maybe got some of the One Page Rules Saurians, like their space Saurians. I think they'd be really good. Having this like not chaos, but not part of the Imperium, and just doing something that's a little bit different. But I really like what they're doing with this army so far. I'm really, really happy with that one. Next up is Red Makers, and they've got some really good looking guardsmen as part of this set, but also these, I put aggressors, but they're not aggressors. They are the Space Marines that are basically in big tanks with blenders on the arms, those ones, but they are almost like an archaic version of this. They look really random. They remind me of those things from Fifth Element, which have like the face almost like in the chest type thing, the way they're proportioned. I'm not sure what army they would go with, maybe like Mechanicum or something like that. I really like them. Not for any of the armies I'm doing, but they're definitely worthwhile having a look at. So that is Red Makers. And next up, we've got Printera, which is the first time I think I've had them on the channel. And these will be a bit of an acquired taste. So they are Grey Knight and Salamanders. Now, the infantry, not a massive fan of. They're more of like a, I suppose, a realistic scale instead, rather than like a heroic scale. So I'm not too much of a fan of the proportions. They also suffer from the same issue that I was saying about goofy weapons. Like one of them's got a bolter here that's like almost the entire size of the Marine. It looks stupid. But what I do really like is they're like Terminators and they're Dreadnoughts. They look absolutely fantastic. I think these look amazing. And depending on what you're into, if it's Salamanders or Grey Knights, you can swap out the different parts as well. So you can print, you know, one instead and like change out the different shoulder pads and stuff. Really, really like it. The infantry could probably work as well with a little bit. It might just be the poses on this, I'm not too sure. But all in all, I really like the look of those. Next up on the list is a D&D. The first one is Sordane Publishing. This is the first one, or the first time they've been on the channel, I think. Now, interestingly, they do them in the standard like scale that everyone's used to, but they also do 15mm ones. So if you're into D&D and you want to do 15mm D&D, they've already got them pre-supported and ready to go. I think D&D at 15mm is actually, I know some people say they don't like it because you're pushing around tiny, tiny miniatures. I really like it because it allows for so much scope in terms of like printing off buildings and stuff like that. It takes less commitment to print off an entire set and all the terrain to go with it. So I think it's a great idea. These are really nice. So it's called the Twisted Sorcery. And there's just loads of like magical users. They're a little bit more cartoony and they just look great. They're lovely sculpts. I think they all look fantastic. There's a lot here to like. A lot of really fun creatures as well. So there's this like bunny unicorn with wings. I mean, what's not to like about that? It's telling a fun story. I really like it. They've got these weird frogs with horrible looking tongues as well. So Sordane Publishing, worthwhile checking out. Not too sure what they print like, but yeah, really like the look of those. Next up, we've got Mammoth Factory Games. And this is, I've written down, The Last of Us Goes Fantasy. And I know it's not technically The Last of Us, and this is an actual race from D&D, but I really, really like what I'm seeing here. These look fantastic. They've got these like spore shamblers that look amazing. They've got this big old like baby spore mushroom thing. Looks incredible. This fungal dragon looks really, really nice. The way they captured all the textures and stuff like that and the wings and blended that, it's like giant mushroom wings. Looks incredible. So much to like about this set. I really like the renders. Well, I think I mentioned it last time when I covered Mammoth Factory Games, is that these renders look nice. It's easy to see what's going on there. They went through a stage of using these renders that looked really hard to tell what was going on. Very much a big fan of this and want to see what's happening here. Moving on to Dragon Trappers Lodge, and it must be Month for the Mushroom because they are also doing mushrooms as well. Different types of mushrooms there. They got little tiny baby mushrooms, they got bigger mushrooms, and then they got giant mushrooms as well. The thing on this set that I love are these like beholder dogs, and they look like they make really fun squig proxies. I really like them. Again, a lot to like about it. Must be Mushroom Month. Let me know, have I missed something? Is there like a D&D release that's come out that's very mushroom themed? But I like these, they look fantastic. But those little squiggy dogs, oh, I love them. Next up is a White Werewolf Tavern, and I've put Ice and Walrus People. And these are a really nice looking set. They're a little bit more cartoony with the Walrus People, but also they look fantastic. A lot of detail on there. I really like them. And then they've got these like ice demony imps, and then this big old like chaos guy with an axe. And then you've just got all these hero units as well. And the main like female unit for this one looks fantastic. Like all the detail on there, all like the texture on that cloak, on the belt, everything just looks amazing. It's a really lovely looking set. And again, they look great, but then I also want to find out what's going on in that adventure because it just captures my attention. So that is a White Werewolf Tavern. And then last on the list is a Belksasar Cult of the Shadows. I butchered that name. So this one is a really interesting one, and again, probably going to be an acquired taste. It's got almost the aesthetic of Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy IX. I really like it. A little bit more cartoony, a lot of detail on there, some really interesting looking sculpts as well. And again, there's a lot of character for all of these. So they're all like quite individual, but themed together, but they're all really, really characterful. And like there's this lady here sat on this like smoky dragon, and then all of these ladies with these like lionesses and chains and stuff. There's a lot going on. And again, I'm just intrigued to know what's happening here. So that is A Cult of the Shadows by Belksasar. Moving across on to Terrain. And first up, we've got Terrain Essentials and their Bandit Camp. This is a really nice one. Normally, you get all like your buildings and your ruins and everything else, but this is just nice. It's a bit different. Basically, it's a bandit camp and everything you'd expect from a bandit camp. So great to use in like a D&D adventure, or just have some scattered terrain if you're doing some fantasy stuff. You've got your tents, you've got a little market stall bit, you've got all these cages, traps, archery targets, a lot of stuff there, and I really like the look of that. Next up is a Print Minis and their Sci-Fi Market. So same sort of thing there as the Bandit Camp previously. We're used to having Gothic ruins, or Gothic church, or random Gothic platforms. This is just a little bit different when it comes to this month and like sci-fi and everything, because you've got this Sci-Fi Market, and I really like it. There's a lot here. It's almost like a bit of a shanty town. You've got all these like metal roofs and like metal corrugated like fences and stuff like that. You've also got some floors, so that way if you want to theme it all together and like print off some floors, you've got that. These big old like ironworks, some big bits to go with it. And then it does also come with some miniatures as well. So it's definitely worthwhile having a look at. I just realised this microphone's clipped to my chest hair and it's really, oh, there it is. I like it. There's a lot going on there. It's very themed. It could definitely add a little bit more spice to some of your adventures. Next up, we've got Infinite Dimensions and Town Ruins. And I was in two minds about putting this on here because we've had a lot of town ruins recently. However, this is like a town ruin with a big like water wheel on the side of it. I think it looks really, really nice. The only thing that concerns me with this set is it looks like it would be really difficult to print. I'm not too sure how easy that would be to do, but if you get it printed off nicely, it's nice. And again, it's always nice to have a few town ruins to go there. Another one on here is STL Miniatures, and they've done something really different. And I've not seen this sort of thing. Well, I have, but not that often. And it's these like floating islands with like terrain pieces and everything on top. And pretty much every D&D adventure you end up coming across, there's always a D&D adventure out there with floating islands or some kind of thing you've got to figure out, how do I get up there and stuff. I really like this. It's really well done and it looks great. And I like the way they've managed the floatiness. So you've got these like clouds towards the bottom and then all these like bricks and stuff, like stone falling from it. And that's what's holding it up in the air. And if you don't want to have the buildings on top of the islands, you don't have to. The thing I really like is they've got all these like stairway bridges that connect all the islands, and it's very well themed. It's a lovely looking set and you could probably always make use of it. And I think, again, if you are like a dungeon master and you suddenly get your party to come over and then they look and suddenly you've got all these floating islands, it's definitely going to be a bit more like, oh, wow, that looks great from your party. Versus it's always nice to have buildings and stuff like that, but everyone expects that from buildings. This is just something that makes you go, yeah, okay, this is going to be a fun adventure. And last on the terrain list is Gamescape 3D, and they're doing this like night estate. And the reason I put this one on here is it's a little bit more, so when you're printing off a village, for example, it's a lot of work. You've got to print off all the different things for a village to make it complete. But with this, it's buildings that are part of it. So there's not a huge amount of buildings, but you've got this like watchtower, you've got the knight's house, you've got a little bit of a wall as well. There's enough here to make it this complete thing that you can explore and have on the table, but without it being too much. And it's really nicely sculpted. So I thought I'd throw it on there. Moving across onto the Kickstarters and the Frontiers. And first up, we've got Mammoth Factory Games Void Stalkers. This is something I covered on the channel a couple of weeks ago. It's Mammoth Factory Games' first sci-fi set. It's really nice. It's basically Tyranid proxies. So if you are into your Tyranid army, if you want to get into it, it comes with pretty much all the units you're going to need to get started. They're very well sculpted and the pre-supports work nicely as well. The only thing I would say is they're not modular. So if you did want modular stuff, that's not part of it, but there's enough different variations of poses on here that should pretty much satisfy everything, and then you can mirror some of them as well. They're also a little bit more slender than your standard Tyranids, but in my headcanon that makes sense because all the Tyranids are going to be different and just adds a bit more variation. So even if you're like me and you've got loads of Tyranid stuff, and I've got far too much Tyranid stuff, it's nice to have some extra stuff that look a little bit different. They've got this big old like Queen unit that looks fantastic. It's like basically the Queen from Alien meets Tyranids and they blended them together. It looks great. So that is Mammoth Factory Games and Void Stalkers. Next up, we've got Dark Horizon, and they are tiptoeing around Games Workshop. These, however, look amazing. They are Games Workshop models scaled up to 75mm. Now you could be cheeky and scale them down in your slicer and then print them off at your standard 32mm height. But they're lovely. They're really, really nice. You've got this like Space Wolf, which looks absolutely gorgeous. You've then got the Inquisitor Eisenstein with a Henry Cavill head. And I love it. This looks absolutely beautiful. I might back this one just because I want that Inquisitor. I read the Eisenhorn novels not so long ago, a couple of months back, and I was hooked. So I bought the model, not realizing it was Finecast. And I've never touched a Finecast model before because I heard bad things. Got it. Realised it's Finecast, and all the bad things that people say about Finecast are true. It was just crap. It's awful quality, and Games Workshop should stop selling them. They're just completely unacceptable. This, such a lovely sculpt. Looks amazing. You've then got like this Chaplain. You've then got Fabius Bile. It's just really, really nice looking sculpt. And I quite want to get it not just to maybe scale it down and use it as like 32mm, but to print it off at the full 75mm and do a bit of a painting challenge. Because I've never really done anything where I've had to really push myself to improve. And doing something like that with the Inquisitor model and having to try to paint all the flesh and stuff like that and actually get it right, I think it could be quite a fun project. So worthwhile checking out. Not sure if it will make it to the end of its campaign because, wow, they are treading dangerous territory there, but absolutely lovely sculpts. Next up is Modibox, and this is a really interesting little set. So it's a modular like storage box and case that you can print off, and it's great because it has loads of purposes. It's not just like, oh, this is for carrying models or this is for your paints. You can print off like these trays to have all like your game aids in there, like dice and counters, or you could print off these like all these different shelves. So you print off like your shelf first, and then you print off all your different shelves that you want in there. For carrying miniatures, it's got this really interesting design where you like slot these bits in with ridges, and it clips over the top of the miniature's base, so it holds it in place, so you don't have to worry about like magnets and stuff. Only downside with that is if you're doing bases that have a lot of like decoration on there, they're not going to fit, so worthwhile bearing in mind. However, there's a lot of stuff that you can do, and the reason I'm interested in this and potentially will back it is you might be able to see it like in the background, but like normally through the week I will work like my desk just sat here in the center. I'll do all my work and everything, and all my paints end up kind of getting pushed off to the side. So my current painting project, all the paints, the models that I'm currently painting go off to the side. It'd be lovely to take all of those paints and the models I'm currently printing, put them into some kind of storage box where they're nice and organized, and then put that aside instead. Just helps me to declutter. And it means that I don't have to take all that stuff and put it onto the shelves and stuff behind me. Very first world problem, but I quite like that as a solution for it. So worthwhile checking out. That is the Modi Boxy XL. Next up is a sci-fi desert city. And if you're into Star Wars Legions, yeah, basically it's Mos Espa in printed form. You get all your walls, moisture towers, market, standard buildings, and everything else there. It's called Starhaven Sci-Fi Desert City. Basically has everything you're going to need to print off all that terrain to have a nice big old desert sci-fi city. And the last one on the list is Sector Factorum. I really like the look of this one because it's basically all of these big old like oil pumps and big sort of like, I don't know, basically Factorum buildings and stuff like that. You've got these like oil wells coming out, all these pipes, some really interesting looking buildings. There's sci-fi like ground tiles as well. So if you want to have some like road tiles going through the middle of it, it's got all of that available. The thing that I like is at the moment I'm printing off loads of like sci-fi buildings to have as part of a battlefield, as a project I'm doing. And they're all buildings that have a lot of play space in, so you can remove the roofs and put your units and stuff in there. Lots of walkways come off them and stuff like that. But then they're all boxy buildings, so on their own they're a bit boring. Having something like that to go with it, so you could then have like a big oil pump that's coming out of one side of it, really helps to sell the theme of this is a sci-fi city that you're building, or not necessarily a city, but like a manufacturing area. There's some different objectives and stuff. So I'm probably going to back this one. Really like the look of it. And that one is called Sector Factorium Blocks. So there we go. That is this month. I've shot that video twice now. I'm completely losing my voice. So thanks for watching. If there's anything that I've not covered in there that you think should be covered, throw it down in the comments below. Also, let me know, is there anything on that list that you want me to cover in terms of like my creator review for each month? So the idea is that I'll choose a creator, maybe one that I've covered, maybe one that you guys all think that I should be covering as well. Subscribe to their bits, get it all downloaded, print off, paint up the set, see how it prints, see how it paints, and just see what they're all like. Let me know in the comments below who you would like me to cover, and I'll aim to do that for next month. In the meantime, stay safe, enjoy your 3D printing and painting, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Ta-ra!